It starts like most things in this town, quiet and slow, the kind of place where seasons change more often than opinions and strangers are noticed before they notice you. I moved out here 15 years ago, not running from anything but certainly seeking something. Peace, privacy, the kind of silence that lets you hear your own thoughts again. I purchased 100 acres of dense woodland with a clearing just large enough for a modest home. I built it with my hands over the course of 2 years. Nothing fancy but sturdy. Like me, 2 bedrooms though I only needed one. A large workshop behind the house where I could tinker with engines and restore old furniture. A covered porch that wrapped around 3 sides, perfect for watching storms roll in over the valley. It was exactly what I wanted. Far enough from everything that I could breathe, but close enough to civilization that I could make supply runs without much hassle. For almost a decade, it was perfect. I kept to myself. The nearest neighbor was half a mile down the road, an elderly couple who waved when our trucks passed, but otherwise respected the invisible boundary of privacy we all moved here to establish. Then came the development. A large parcel of land about 3 miles east of my property was purchased by a company called Sunrise Estates. They cleared hundreds of acres of pristine forest and erected 96 cookie-cutter homes with pristine lawns and identical mailboxes. The people who moved in were mostly transplants from the city. They wanted the country lifestyle without any of the country inconveniences. They wanted views without wildlife, space without the isolation, and most importantly, they wanted control. Within 6 months of the first family moving in, they had established the Sunrise Estates Homeowners Association, a governing body of suburban warriors armed with clipboards and indignation. I paid it no mind. Their jurisdiction ended at their development boundary. Their rules did not apply to those of us who lived here before they arrived, but some people cannot leave well enough alone. Some people consider power to be a resource that must continually expand or die. Karen Westfield was one of those people. I first saw her at the general store in town. She stood at the counter with perfect posture, her blonde hair cut in the exact same style as every other woman on television. She spoke too loudly about the local charm, while simultaneously complaining about the limited organic options. I remember thinking she seemed like the type of person who vacations in rural areas but gets upset when she encounters actual rural people. I was not wrong. Karen was elected HOA president within 2 months of moving in. Her platform was simple: transform the area into a premier community with standards that reflect our values. The translation was equally simple: make everything look like the suburb they had left behind. Force conformity on a place whose primary appeal was its wildness. It began with letters. I found the first one tucked under my windshield wiper when I parked at the hardware store. Official HOA letterhead. A notice about unpermitted fence structures on my property and a deadline for removal. I laughed and tossed it in the trash. I was miles from their development. My fences were on my land. Their rules were meaningless here. The second notice came by mail. This time the language was more severe. Failure to comply with community standards will result in formal action. I considered responding but decided against it. Engaging would only validate their delusion of authority. So I continued my routine, chopping wood for the winter, fixing up an old tractor, living my life on my terms. Then she knocked on my door. Karen stood on my porch with a red clipboard and 2 men I did not recognize flanking her like silent sentinels. "We have made multiple attempts to contact you about compliance issues," she said without introduction. Her voice was clipped, professional, as if she were performing for an invisible audience. "You have no jurisdiction here," I responded flatly. "My property is not part of your development or your HOA." She smiled thinly. "The board has voted to extend our community safety standards to adjacent properties that impact our neighborhood aesthetics and values. Your situation here is concerning to many residents." "My situation," I repeated slowly. "The industrial equipment, the unmarked vehicles, the late-night activities." She gestured vaguely toward my workshop. "Several residents have expressed concern about what exactly goes on out here." I stood straighter. "This conversation is over. Please leave my property." She did leave, but not before placing another notice in my hand and saying something that stuck with me for days afterward. "We are watching you. This community has standards now." I knew then that trouble was coming. What she did not know, what no one in this area knew, was that my land was more than it seemed. That my privacy was not just preference but necessity. That the government had interests here that superseded any clipboard-wielding suburban crusader. It was only a matter of time before she crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Like weeds in spring, their reach grew fast. Karen orchestrated a special meeting of the Sunrise Estates HOA in early April. I know this because Marcus, one of the few reasonable development residents, slipped a copy of the minutes under my door with a warning note. "Thought you should see this." The board had voted to create what they called a community monitoring influence zone, extending 5 miles beyond their actual boundaries. They had no legal authority to enforce rules outside their development, of course, but that did not stop them from acting as if they did. The minutes detailed the creation of a neighborhood safety patrol led by none other than Karen herself. Volunteers would conduct regular wellness checks and community standard compliance monitoring throughout the area. They would report suspicious activities and aesthetic violations to the proper authorities. It was neighborhood watch twisted into neighborhood control. Within days, patrol vehicles began appearing. Regular civilian cars with magnetic Sunrise Safety Patrol signs slapped on the doors. They drove slowly past properties that had existed decades before their development broke ground. They took photos. They wrote notes. They left warnings. It was surveillance dressed up as community service. I found the first trail camera on the utility pole across from my driveway on a Tuesday morning. Small, camouflaged, but not well enough to escape notice. I left it in place. Let them watch. Let them see nothing of importance. The real activities happened well beyond the range of any consumer-grade surveillance equipment. The campaign against me escalated quickly. One morning, I drove into town for supplies and overheard 2 cashiers discussing the strange military man who lived in the woods. They fell silent when they noticed me, eyes darting away in obvious discomfort. Word was spreading. Rumors were forming. Karen was building a narrative. I obtained a copy of the monthly Sunrise Estates newsletter. There, in black and white, "Security alert. Residents should avoid the northwestern woods area due to reports of unauthorized military-style activities and potential weapons storage. The safety patrol is monitoring the situation." No names were mentioned, but everyone would know exactly who they meant. Then came the county complaints. A friend at the permit office called to give me a heads up. "Someone filed 3 separate reports about you," he said. "Claims you are operating heavy machinery without permits, storing hazardous materials, and conducting paramilitary training on private land. None of it is within county jurisdiction given your property classification, but thought you should know they are really coming after you." I thanked him and hung up. Then I made another call, this one to a number few people have. 4 rings, then a familiar voice answered. "Agent Davis," I said. "We might have a situation developing, local interference with the property." The voice on the other end was calm, professional. "Details." I explained everything. The HOA expansion, the surveillance, the rumors, the false reports. When I finished, there was a long pause. "Document everything," Agent Davis finally said. "Photos, recordings, names, and dates. Do not engage directly. We will monitor the situation from our end." "Should I be concerned?" I asked. "Not yet, but stay alert. These types sometimes escalate when they do not get compliance. That is when mistakes happen." The next day, I installed my own cameras. Higher quality, better range, positioned strategically around the perimeter of my property. I wanted evidence of whatever came next, because something was certainly coming. It did not take long. That weekend, I spotted Karen's silver SUV parked half a mile down the access road to my property. I watched through binoculars as she raised her own set to her eyes, scanning my house and workshop methodically. When she noticed me watching her, she quickly drove away. 2 days later, I caught her again, this time with a man I did not recognize. They were placing something at the edge of my property line. I reviewed my security footage that night and saw them installing another trail camera, this one aimed directly at my front gate. This was beyond casual surveillance. This was targeted harassment. The monthly HOA meeting minutes appeared again, courtesy of Marcus. This time, Karen had proposed a security fund to protect the community from external threats. The motion passed unanimously. They were pooling resources now, organizing. What had started as petty control was morphing into something more dangerous, a mob mentality wrapped in suburban righteousness. I sent all the evidence to my FBI liaison that evening. Every photo, every video clip, every document. The response came quickly. Continue monitoring, do not confront. We have opened a file on this situation. I knew what that meant. The government takes threats to its operations seriously, even when those threats come disguised as clipboard-wielding HOA presidents. My property was not just land. It was a designated training facility used periodically by federal tactical units for live fire exercises and equipment testing. All perfectly legal, all properly permitted, all absolutely classified. Karen had no idea what she was interfering with. She thought she was pressuring a reclusive veteran to conform to her standards. What she was actually doing was disrupting federal operations, and that was a mistake that would cost her everything. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. I was 30 miles away, picking up specialized equipment parts in the next county over. My neighbor Elijah, one of the few original residents who predated the development, sounded breathless on the phone. "They are at your place," he said without preamble. "About 7 of them. They broke through your gate, been inside about 15 minutes now." My blood went cold. "Did you call the sheriff?" "Tried. Dispatcher said they would send someone, but it will be at least 40 minutes. You know how it is out here." I thanked him and ended the call. Then I called Agent Davis. "We have intrusion," I said. "Multiple individuals, forced entry. I am not on site." "Do not approach until we advise," came the immediate response. "We are tracking your security feeds remotely. Units are being notified." I drove back anyway, not rushing, not speeding, but moving with purpose. By the time I pulled onto my access road, I could see they were already gone. The gate hung awkwardly from one hinge, the lock mechanism completely destroyed. I parked and approached slowly, scanning for any movement, any sign they might still be present. The house door stood open. Dirty boot prints tracked across my porch and into the main living area. Inside, drawers had been opened, papers scattered, photos of my family taken down from walls and left on countertops. They had gone through everything, not bothering to hide their invasion. This was not a burglary. Nothing of value appeared to be missing. This was a message, a demonstration of power. I checked the workshop next. The main door was untouched, still securely locked. But there were scratches around the keyhole. Someone had tried to gain entry but failed. The reinforced locks and security system had held. That was something at least. The equipment inside was government property. The consequences for tampering with it would have been severe. I returned to the house and opened my laptop. The security system had captured everything. 7 people, 4 women and 3 men, all wearing matching blue windbreakers with Sunrise Safety Patrol emblazoned on the back. Leading them was Karen, clipboard still in hand, directing the others like a field commander. The footage showed them arriving in 3 vehicles. Karen attempted the gate first, finding it locked. She conferred with the others, then nodded. One of the men produced what looked like bolt cutters. The lock did not stand a chance. They proceeded to my front door, knocked once perfunctorily, waited perhaps 10 seconds. Then the same man who had cut the lock simply kicked the door hard right beside the handle. The frame splintered. They walked in as if they owned the place. The interior cameras caught their systematic search. Karen pointing, directing, "Check those cabinets. Look for documentation. See if there is a basement entrance." They were looking for something specific. The others appeared uncomfortable, less certain, but followed her instructions nonetheless. One woman pointed at a camera in the corner of the living room. Karen looked directly at it and smiled before continuing her search. She knew she was being recorded. She simply did not care. They attempted the workshop door, failed to gain entry, then regrouped in my living room. Karen placed something on my kitchen counter. The inspection notice I had found earlier before leading her group back outside. Total intrusion time, 22 minutes. I forwarded the complete video files to Agent Davis along with photographs of the damage. Then I sat on my porch and waited. The sheriff's deputy arrived an hour later. He took pictures, wrote a report, and looked deeply uncomfortable when I showed him the security footage. "This is a clear breaking and entering," he said. "Plus criminal trespass and property damage. We can file charges based on this." I nodded but said nothing about my federal contacts. Let local law enforcement do their part. The other wheels were already in motion. That evening I found it. Karen's Facebook post. A public announcement to the entire Sunrise Estates community group. Safety Patrol conducted its first civic inspection today on the problematic property northwest of our development. What we found confirmed our concerns. Suspicious documentation, potential evidence of unauthorized activities, and resistance to community standards. Rest assured we will continue monitoring this situation to keep our families safe. Attached were blurry photos of my living room, my kitchen, my personal effects, my privacy violated and then broadcast online for community approval. Comments poured in below, most supportive. A few questioning the legality. Karen dismissing those concerns with practiced authority. The Safety Patrol operates under community mandate for the public good. I saved everything, every comment, every share, the entire post. I added it to the growing file of evidence and sent it to Agent Davis with a simple note. Escalation confirmed. They are publicly documenting their illegal entry. The response came quickly. Federal involvement authorized, stand by for contact. What Karen did not understand as she proudly displayed her civic duty online was simple. She had not just broken into a private residence. She had forcibly entered a designated federal facility. She had interfered with national security operations. She had crossed a line from which there was no return. The wheels of bureaucracy turned slowly, but federal wheels crushed thoroughly. 3 days after the break-in, a plain white envelope appeared in Karen's mailbox. Inside, a formally worded cease and desist letter on Department of Justice letterhead. It detailed the specific laws violated during her civic inspection and the potential consequences: criminal trespassing on federal property, unauthorized forced entry, interference with government operations, destruction of government property. I know this because Karen brought it to the local news. Channel 8 sent a van with a fresh-faced reporter to interview the community leader standing up to government intimidation. Karen stood on her immaculately landscaped front lawn, letter in hand, speaking with the righteous indignation of the deeply deluded. "This is clearly a prank," she told the camera. "Someone trying to intimidate us for doing our duty to the community. The property in question has been a concern for years. The owner is antisocial, possibly unstable. We have reason to believe he may be operating an illegal militia or weapons storage facility." The reporter asked if she had evidence of these claims. "We have community concerns," Karen replied without hesitation. "Multiple residents have reported unusual activities, strange vehicles, loud noises at night. Our safety patrol has documented numerous code violations. We are simply protecting our families." The reporter, to his credit, asked about the legality of entering private property without permission. Karen waved the question away. "We announced ourselves. We waited for a response. When none came, we acted under community safety protocols. If the property had nothing to hide, why are they so defensive?" The segment aired that evening. By morning, Karen had rallied the HOA board to issue a formal statement, standing against government overreach and intimidation of community safety initiatives. They scheduled an emergency meeting to discuss expanding patrol authority and protection measures. What Karen did not know was that the letter was simply the first move in a carefully choreographed sequence. The public bravado, the dismissal of federal warnings, the doubling down, all of it documented and added to the growing case file. 2 days after the news segment, the black sedans appeared. 3 of them, parked outside the Sunrise Estates Community Center during the emergency meeting. Men and women in dark suits entered quietly, presented federal credentials, and requested to speak with Karen Westfield and the Safety Patrol members immediately. I was not present, of course, but Marcus called me afterward, his voice low and amazed. "They shut the whole thing down," he said. "Separated everyone for individual interviews. Karen came out looking like she had seen a ghost." The agents conducted interviews throughout the neighborhood for the next 2 days, knocking on doors, asking specific questions about the safety patrol, about Karen's leadership, about knowledge of the break-in at my property. Cars slowed when passing Karen's house. People stopped inviting her to community functions. The whispers began, not about me anymore, but about her. I watched from a distance as her carefully constructed kingdom began to crumble. The woman who once strode confidently through the development now hurried from her car to her front door, eyes down, shoulders hunched. The safety patrol vehicles disappeared from the streets. The blue windbreakers vanished. One evening, Agent Davis visited me personally. We sat on my porch watching the sunset spread orange fire across the valley. "She is panicking," he said, "calling lawyers, claiming harassment, threatening to go to higher authorities." "Will she succeed?" I asked. Agent Davis smiled thinly. "She does not understand how deep this goes, the property designation, the security clearance, the operation parameters. She thinks this is about trespassing. It is not. It is about national security." "What happens next?" "You set the stage, now let it play." He sipped his coffee calmly. "Just maintain your routine, document any further contact. We will handle the rest." So I did. I repaired my gate and door. I reinforced my security system. And I waited, drinking my morning coffee on the porch, watching as federal agents continued their methodical investigation, moving through the community like a slow-motion avalanche, burying Karen and her patrol beneath the weight of their own actions. The notification came 3 weeks later. Standard procedure. A text message with a simple code. "Exercise active 601-400 TMRW. Secure perimeter." It meant exactly what it always meant. Federal tactical teams would be conducting live fire training exercises on the designated portions of my property the following day. I would secure myself in the safe zone, and they would utilize the reinforced training areas deeper in my land. These exercises happened 4 times a year, always scheduled, always controlled, always by the book. This one was no different in planning, but the timing seemed significant. I messaged Agent Davis, "Regular training tomorrow. Given current situation, should we postpone?" His response was immediate. "Proceed as scheduled. Additional security measures in place. Standard protocols apply." That night, I secured all entries to my property. Additional warning signs went up along the perimeter. "No trespassing, active training area, danger." Red flags on poles marked the boundaries as they always did during exercise periods. By dawn, I had completed the safety checklist and moved to my designated observation area, a reinforced structure with one-way visibility glass at the edge of the training zone. The teams arrived precisely at 600. 4 unmarked vans, tactical gear, training weapons loaded with specialized rounds, real enough to be dangerous at close range but designed to minimize collateral damage. Standard procedure. The team leaders checked in, confirmed the perimeter was secure, and began their exercises. By 900, the familiar sounds of tactical drills echoed through the valley. Controlled bursts of fire. Commands shouted between team members. The dull thud of breaching charges against reinforced training doors. It was a carefully choreographed dance of precision and control, contained entirely within the designated zone. At 10:22, according to the security logs I reviewed later, the first unauthorized vehicle approached my property. The repaired gate was now equipped with better cameras and sensors. They captured everything, Karen's silver SUV parking just beyond the entrance. 5 people exiting the vehicle, all wearing the blue safety patrol windbreakers, all moving with purpose toward my gate. Karen carried a digital camera with a zoom lens. Another patrol member held what appeared to be bolt cutters. They approached the gate cautiously, jumping at the distant sound of gunfire from the training area. Karen pointed toward the warning signs, saying something to her companions. 2 of them appeared to argue, pointing back toward their vehicle. Karen shook her head emphatically. They proceeded. The gate held this time. Instead of cutting the lock, they found a section of fencing 20 yards away and began creating an access point. The perimeter alarm triggered. Silent in the training zone, but immediately alerting security teams via radio. The exercise shifted instantly from training to real-world response. Karen and her team did not make it 50 yards past the fence before the first security team intercepted them. One moment they were walking through the woods, cameras ready, and the next they were surrounded by men in tactical gear, weapons at low, ready, command voices ordering them to the ground. The patrol members froze, then panicked. One ran. He was quickly caught, professionally restrained. Karen began shouting about citizen rights and community safety. Her words died when a helicopter appeared overhead, its downdraft bending the trees around them. From my observation post, I watched as they were systematically secured, identified, and processed. Phones and cameras confiscated. IDs checked, each separated for individual questioning. Karen's face registered the exact moment she realized how severely she had miscalculated. The color drained from her cheeks as an agent in a suit, not tactical gear, approached her with a document folder. By noon, news vans lined the public road near my property. Word had spread quickly. Federal agents detaining community safety patrol, possible trespassing on restricted government land. Training exercise interrupted. The headlines practically wrote themselves. I remained in the observation post, as instructed, until the all-clear came at 1500. By then, Karen and her patrol had been escorted off the property, not in handcuffs, but in separate vehicles, each accompanied by federal agents. The exercise had been canceled, the teams recalled to secure the breached perimeter instead. Agent Davis met me at my house as the last of the tactical teams departed. They walked into an active federal training zone, he said, shaking his head in disbelief. After explicit warnings, after a cease and desist, after formal interviews, they still came back. What happens to them now? I asked. They will be processed at the field office. Formal charges are being prepared, trespassing on restricted federal land, interference with government operations, possible conspiracy charges given their prior activities. He looked out toward where the news vans were still parked at the distant roadblock. The publicity alone will do half our job for us. He was right. By evening, the story had exploded across local and regional news. HOA Safety Patrol detained during federal operation. Community leader faces federal charges after unauthorized entry to restricted area. FBI investigating suburban security group for repeated trespassing. The Sunrise Estates HOA board called an emergency session that night. By morning, they had issued a formal statement. The board unanimously votes to disband the safety patrol effective immediately and disavows any unauthorized actions taken by members under its name. We are cooperating fully with federal authorities. Karen's kingdom had not just crumbled. It had been systematically dismantled, brick by brick, by the very forces she had foolishly challenged. They say disgrace spreads faster than fame. Karen learned this firsthand in the days following what local media now called the patrol incident. Her carefully constructed image of community leadership evaporated overnight. The same neighbors who had once nodded approvingly at her clipboard now crossed the street to avoid her. The board members who had rubber-stamped her initiatives now claimed they had been misled or inadequately informed. The formal statement from the HOA was unequivocal. Karen Westfield has been removed from her position as board president and community liaison effective immediately. The actions taken by Ms. Westfield and certain members of the now disbanded Safety Patrol were not authorized by the board and do not reflect the values of our community. Former patrol members began speaking out, each distancing themselves from the decisions that led to federal charges. They claimed they had been manipulated, misled about the legal authority they possessed. Some insisted they had objected to entering my property, but were pressured by Karen's insistence that they had community authority to do so. One former patrol member, a retired schoolteacher named Gloria, approached me at the general store 3 days after the incident. She looked smaller somehow, her earlier confidence deflated by reality. "I want to apologize," she said quietly. "I truly believed we were helping the community. Karen told us you were dangerous, that you were stockpiling weapons, that children might be at risk. She showed us documents she claimed were county reports. I nodded but said nothing. Her intentions might have been good, but her actions had violated my privacy, my property, and my sense of security. Intentions matter less than choices. The FBI agents showed us the truth, Gloria continued. That your land is legally designated for government use, that you have proper permits, that we had been trespassing repeatedly on federal property. She paused. I never would have joined if I had known. Similar conversations happened throughout the community. The narrative shifted. I was no longer the suspicious outsider, but the wronged neighbor. Karen was no longer the community protector, but the overzealous instigator. I decided it was time to clear the air completely. I arranged a small gathering at the general store's community room. Nothing formal, just coffee, donuts, and the truth. About 20 neighbors attended, including several from the development. I explained, in the limited terms my agreement allowed, the nature of my property's use. The land has been designated for periodic government training exercises for over 15 years, I told them. Everything is permitted, regulated, and monitored. The security measures are not to hide illegal activity, but to protect authorized government operations and ensure public safety during training periods. They had questions, of course. I answered what I could and politely declined to address what I could not. By the end, the mood had shifted from curiosity to understanding. One by one, they approached to offer support, to apologize for assumptions, to share their own frustrations with Karen's overreach. Marcus summed it up as the gathering dispersed. You know, we moved here for the same reason you did, to get away from people telling us how to live. Somewhere along the way, some of us forgot that. The legal consequences for Karen mounted quickly. Federal prosecutors filed formal charges. Local authorities added breaking and entering, property damage, and criminal trespass to the list. Civil liability loomed as well. My government contacts assured me that recovery for damages would be aggressively pursued. Karen listed her house for sale 3 weeks after the incident. I watched from a distance as the sign went up. Within days, a moving truck appeared in her driveway. She worked quickly, efficiently, loading her life into cardboard boxes while avoiding eye contact with former neighbors. The house sold within a week, well below market value. A hasty retreat from a community she had once sought to rule. As her car pulled away for the final time, I felt no satisfaction, no vindication, only relief that order had been restored, that boundaries had been reestablished, that the quiet I had sought in coming here might finally return. I restored my property methodically. New gates, better cameras, reinforced fences, not out of fear now, but out of respect for the responsibility I carried. This land served a purpose beyond my personal comfort. It trained those who protected others. That deserved proper security and respect. The silence now is earned. It wraps around my property like a second skin, familiar and comforting. Each morning I walk the perimeter, checking fences, testing locks, ensuring cameras are operational. Not out of paranoia, but out of duty. The responsibility that comes with this land was never something I took lightly. I remember the day, almost 16 years ago now, when Agent Davis first appeared at my door. He was younger then, less gray in his hair, but the same steady presence, the same careful way of explaining things. Your property has unique features, he had said, spreading topographic maps across my kitchen table. The terrain, the isolation, the natural features, it would be ideal for specialized training purposes. The offer was straightforward. Allow periodic use of designated areas of my land for government training exercises. Maintain strict confidentiality, follow security protocols. In exchange, I would receive fair compensation and certain protections. I agreed not because of the money, though it was generous, but because it seemed right. Important work needed a safe place to happen. I could provide that. Over the years, I watched from designated observation points as teams trained for scenarios that might someday save lives. I maintained my end of the agreement with diligence. The government maintained theirs. It was a partnership built on mutual respect and clear boundaries. What Karen never understood was simple. Boundaries exist for reasons that go beyond personal preference. Some rules are not arbitrary assertions of control, but necessary protections. Some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. She saw my fences as challenges to her authority. She never considered they might be shields protecting her from consequences she could not imagine. I stop at the eastern edge of my property, where the new warning signs gleam in the morning sun. Larger now, more explicit. Restricted Federal Training Area, TRSBS-SERS will be PROSECUTD. The fence here is higher, topped with security features that were not necessary before Karen's crusade made them so. There is a certain irony that her actions, meant to force conformity and control, resulted in even stronger barriers between her vision of community and my reality. In seeking to tear down walls she deemed unnecessary, she ensured they would be rebuilt stronger. The development continues its life beyond my boundaries. New families have moved in. The HOA still exists, but with a chastened approach to its authority. They focus now on their actual jurisdiction, lawn height requirements, and approved exterior paint colors within their own borders. The safety patrol is gone, relegated to an embarrassing chapter in community history that residents mention only in hushed tones. I lock the final gate and head back toward my house. Agent Davis is coming by this afternoon to discuss the next scheduled training exercise. The first since the incident, extra precautions will be in place, he assured me. Additional security personnel, enhanced perimeter monitoring. The government takes its operations seriously, especially when they have been compromised once. Justice sometimes walks slowly, but it never forgets its path. Karen discovered this truth too late. She sought to impose her will on land that was not hers to control. She assumed authority she did not possess. She violated boundaries that existed for reasons beyond her understanding, and in the end, she lost everything she had tried to build. The lesson is one as old as humanity itself. Respect the boundaries of others if you wish yours to be respected in turn. Some doors are locked for reasons you cannot see. Some lands are better left alone, and some quiet people have louder allies than you could possibly imagine.